How's it going, Julian?
I'm all right, mate. I'm all right.
All right,
Nice
lad.
early start. All
Looking
good,
well.
mate. Nice early start today.
What are you on with?
Just been out with dog. Got a long day today, but it's quite nice going out in the morning. That like half an hour walk, clear your head before you
Yeah,
start the
I take mine every morning, every single morning. And no matter what, he wags his tail I soon as I get lead out. I say, get your lead, and that's it. Tail goes woo woo, starts spinning around like an helicopter.
They know, don't they, mate? He's in his bed now. He's just cleaning himself, mate, making a lot of noise.
I just turn this off. I won't get a minute. So, how you been keeping? All right?
Yeah, like I said, busy at work, but just quiet week. Kids are at the mum's this week. I've got them next week. They keep popping in every other day. It's a bit more fluid now, but it's just the same for everybody. It's that kind of autumn weather, winter's coming, dark nights are coming in. It depends how you look at it, but I don't mind the dark. It's kind of cozy and you can just chill out and just slow life down a little bit.
Yeah. Lots gone on since we last spoke. We're back up a little bit. I don't really. We'll give them a mention on undercard of Savannah's and Shields, the Sky Show. April Hunter, bit raw, big lass, looks pretty powerful, doesn't she? What do you think to Boom Gardner Mayer? How do you have that?
I thought Mayer won the fight. It was one of those fights, sometimes you can't cry robbery, because I almost expect someone like Mayer with her experience and pedigree to know that she just wasn't doing enough to convincingly win the rounds. I mean, that's not to say that that you should always get the wrong fighter winning. Boom Gardner was doing a lot of posing, a lot of threatening with the right hand early on. But these are 10 2-minute rounds as well. And Mayer even said that, I could see why I probably lost the first 2 rounds, because I didn't do a lot of work. And you can't give rounds away in a 10-2s. Sometimes in championship fights, 12-3s when it's the men, you can have a slow start and you can ease into it. But you find yourself down 10-2s when it's just a sprint. You got a lot of work to do. Having said that, I thought she won the majority of the remaining 8 rounds. I thought she won the fight. She didn't I've heard a lot of people saying that she should have let Boom Gardner come to her. She's got the reach. But it's easier said than done. If somebody wants to sit on the back foot and do a retreat and bring you onto that overhand right, it's really hard to get them to engage, to come forward. I always make this point. You can only do what your opponent lets you do. And Boom Gardner dictated the pace of that fight. She dictated that she was going to sit on the back foot, threaten with the right hand, throw the big uppercuts now and again. And in some of the rounds, they were just too close for me to say that was an out-and-out robbery. I thought Mayer won. I thought she'll kick herself watching that back. But ultimately, it was a good fight. The only thing I will say, it wasn't as good a fight as we were expecting. I thought that would be an absolute...
build-up.
The build-up, I thought this was going to be a brilliant fight. And I've seen 3 or 4 of Mayer's fights, and they're absolutely action-packed. And I thought this was going to be exactly the same thing. But that is the challenge, isn't it? When you're in against the puncher, you can't go gung-ho. You can't set that pace that people are used to seeing. And Mayer had to be a little bit more composed and a little bit more sensible with her raids. And I think that probably cost her the fight. But would I want to see it again? I'm not bothered about seeing that one again.
No, I'm not.
No.
You feel that at the end, Mayer whipping the crowd up and trying to play victim, do you think? She let her off hook a few times, didn't she, Boom Gardner, didn't she?
Yeah, she did. It was, I've always said the same thing. In a close fight, when you look like you're not leaving it all in that ring, you've only got yourself to blame. How many times have we seen over the years fighters complain about a decision, but after 10 rounds or 12 rounds, they've still got the breath and they've still got a load of energy about them, to create that kind of scene. Listen, you leave everything in the ring. You got to do it. All right. People say don't leave it to the judges. A lot of fights go to the distance. You can't knock everybody out, but you got to work harder than that. And for me, she just didn't work hard enough to really put a stamp on that fight. And you can complain afterwards, but as I've just said, you leave that fight pretty fresh, few marks, but pretty fresh in terms of aerobic. It's their own fault.
Could you just turn your volume down a little bit, Julian, just a touch, please?
Yeah, 1 second.
Is that okay?
Yeah, I'll have a go.
That's a bit better. Well, on to the main event. Do you think she looked nervous?
I don't know what happened. It's a difficult one for me to. I thought Marshall might edge that fight. It's really hard to try and critique a fight when it looks like, in your opinion, they got the tactics completely wrong.
Oh.
The reason I'm saying that is because as a coach, your fighter can sometimes just go out there and do what the hell they want. This happens. Styles make fights. Fights never turn out like you think they're going to turn out. But at the first round, the way Savannah just ran over to her and she was tip-tap and skitting around her, I just didn't know what she was doing, if I'm being completely honest. It's like, you've got the gift of height and reach and power. The only way you get that power off is by leveraging distance between yourself and your opponent. You look at the great punchers of our time, the long punchers, the Lennox Lewis's, the Thomas Hearns's. Okay, you look at the leverage and the distance that they needed to get that power off. And they did that by creating space, by having a really dominant jab, by having good balance and good footwork. And you didn't see those guys jumping around all the time, switching stance and tip-tap on the feet. I'm not being critical, I'm being honest. You never saw that. And she never gave herself the best opportunity. And I always thought that Shields would cause her problems at that kind of close distance because speed, timing, she's a good 10-round fighter, she throws combinations. And in that close arena, Marshall's never going to beat Shields. She's only going to beat her by creating distance. And I'm being diplomatic. I didn't know what she was doing the first few rounds. I was just watching that with my head in my hands, and I thought, does she think she can just wear her down? You've got to have a strategy, Russell. You have to have a strategy, and it can't always be down to the coach. Sometimes that boxer, how many times have I talked about the Larry Holmes? He was just such a great ring IQ that he didn't need repeatedly instructions. Like we know that Anthony Joshua needs those instructions to the letter. And I think Savannah Marshall has a good ring IQ. I just don't know what she was doing. And by the time she got into the fight, it was more because Shields was tiring and she'd set a great pace herself. Again, you can only do what your opponent lets you do. I thought the tactics were wrong. I have to say that. I've listened as a coach and as a boxer, ex-amateur and working with fighters, sometimes you get it wrong. No one's going to say that she got it right 12 times out of 12 and give her credit. You only ever hear about when people get it wrong. But she got the tactics wrong. The tactics were wrong, I have to say. And I'm not suggesting that it would have been a massive... Maybe Shields would have found a way to win. Maybe Shields is a better fighter. She obviously proved that at the weekend. But I didn't think it was that close. I thought it was 7-3, maybe 7-2-1. And I thought the rounds that Shields won were convincing, and I thought the rounds that I gave Marshall, if I'm being honest, were she scraped them. So I had no issue with the decision. Hopefully, they both made a lot of money. I hope Savannah doesn't retire. I know she's talked about potentially retiring. I hope she carries on. I wouldn't mind seeing it again because I'd like to see a difference in approach.
Yeah, I won't mind seeing it again. And fighting it differently. But you don't know if the occasion got to her, do we? We don't know, do we? You don't know what's going through that girl's head, do you?
Well, what I don't fear, I won't use fear because fighters at that level are fearless. But sometimes, as you said, the emotion can get to you. So there are two things you do when you panic. You either run in or you run away. Some people do that, don't they? They just run into a situation. Fear can cause you to do different things. Not fear, sorry, the occasion. And she looked really relaxed. an hour or two before the fight and fight week, and then she had that real pensive look about her 10 minutes before the fight, and her body language completely changed. So I don't know. It's one of those, isn't it? You do an autopsy all the time, don't you? We can break it down as much as we want, but you have to just say, okay, well, what's next? What do I change going forward? And I was just frustrated watching the fight. I'm not suggesting she's better than Shields. It looked like she wasn't, but I don't think she gave herself the best opportunity, the way that she approached that fight, to have a chance of winning.
You feel that sometimes when the top elite people fight, one elite person's more confident on the night and they just got them extra few strings to the bow.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a case, but boxing, you know, certainly at elite professional level, boxing's all about rhythm. And if you let a good fighter get into a rhythm, you know, easier said than does breaking that rhythm. But if you let a good fighter get into a flow, start landing so early as she did, it takes such a long time to swing that fight and such a long time to turn it around. I didn't think when I previewed it, I didn't think Marshall would be hurt Shields badly. I thought Shields had that look for me as somebody who could really take a shot. I just knew that Shields would have that durability about her. So I thought Savannah would really just keep it long, or at least attempt to keep it long. It's frustrating because the one thing we've all learned, you know, those 10-2s, you blink. I said it about the Mayer Boom Gardner fight. You blink and that fight's over. And you can't let someone get into a rhythm over 2-minute rounds. It's impossible to switch it.
Do you think that female fighters nowadays have to be more explosive over the 2 rounds? Because it looks to me like they're training for 3-minute rounds and pacing themselves. And then when they go into fight, it's 2-minute rounds and they don't get to show what they can do. You feel that that's a good point?
Yeah, it's like amateur boxing, isn't it? Even if you watch the Olympics and you watch the elite amateur boxings in the championship, the pace is just a ridiculous pace, a completely different pace to professional boxing. So that's what we've got now. It's almost like amateur boxing over 10 rounds is female boxing, because the 3-minute, when you're trying to explain to someone in the gym the difference between 3 minutes and 2 minutes, a layman will always say, well, the difference is 1 minute. But anybody who's in the sport will tell you, no, a 3-minute round is twice as long as a 2-minute round, because you've already put a lot of work into that first minute and a half, 2 minutes, then you have to box another minute. So you box in that final minute of a round, having sustained punishment and giving punishment and use a lot of your kind of aerobic capacity. 3-minute rounds are an absolute killer. I remember I was an amateur. I only boxed 2-minute rounds. And then we used to spar 2-minute rounds. But then a few times I've tried 3-minute rounds. Absolute brutal. Even when you're hitting a bag for 3 minutes, it's such a big difference. I'm not sure, I want to see female boxing over 3 minutes, if I'm being honest. That might contradict what I've just said. I'm not convinced I want to see it over 3 minutes.
But some of them, to be honest, look like they've walked off at Return at Jedi set, don't they? And some of them shouldn't even be in there, and they couldn't do 3 minutes. But your elite ones, like Savannah, obviously I've seen her train. She trains like a demon. She could easily do it. Shields could easily do it. They're your top fighters, aren't they?
There might be a case for unifications being a specific contract being over 3-minute rounds, but we're seeing even some of these world title fights with women's boxing. It's a low level of boxing. So if you think of, okay, I'll go back to the Ebony Bridges fight when she fought Shannon Courtney. Those girls over 10-2s smashed each other to pieces, didn't they? Remember her, Ebony Bridges' eye. And the state. Now, you imagine that over 10-3s, the damage that they would do to each other, because they're not huge punchers. Defensively, they're not great. And they're basically just beating each other up for 20 minutes. Now, if that was even, 12-3s over a men's championship distance, if people talk about, leveling the playing field out, that'd be savage, wouldn't it? What damage are they doing? And the fact that they're not, it's that debate, isn't it? People always talk about concussive punches, the damage that they can cause. Sometimes it's the amount of times your brain gets rattled You get rattled by a big shot, you get rattled by a lighter shot. And the amount of punches the females are throwing in those 2-minute rounds, I'm just not comfortable watching it for 3 minutes, but that's just my opinion.
It's like they know they've got to score quick and heavily. Obviously, the Shields were throwing them quick, weren't you? But
if you don't, go on.
No, I was going to say, looking at the fight, I would have liked to have seen Savannah use her height more and show her length and that. But when you're in there, you don't know what's going to happen either. The other girl could just change it, can't they? And things happen, don't they?
Yeah, she was in with a really good fighter. But the one thing she did, and that wasn't Shields, and Peter Fury doesn't need anybody telling this stuff. But this wasn't because Shields was making her do this, but she lost her shape completely straight away. There are golden rules in boxing. There are golden rules when you know, in terms of how you stand. And one of those golden rules is when you're in range, you don't cross your left shoulder with your right shoulder. You don't put your right shoulder in front of your left. You have to stay pointed all the time. Certainly tall fighters have to stay pointed. And she was constantly twisting and pivoting, but not pivoting the feet, but just pivoting the front shoulder. And all she was doing was bringing herself into the range. She was taking away her power. You have to point. You know, every fight I've ever trained, I always talk about the point, the left shoulder. And I go back to these fighters who have got great leverage. But if you look at, all right, instead of picking someone from the 80s and 90s who's got a really good right hand, I'll go relevant. I'll break McGowan traditional, I'll go relevant. If you look at Lawrence Okoli, you look at George Groves, you look at how those guys throw right hands, you look at how they have a solid jab. They point their left shoulder. They continually point the left shoulder. You don't see them crossing the shoulder every 2 minutes. And they do that because they're increasing the distance between themselves and their opponent by pointing, by being more sideways on from the upper. And they're creating more leverage on the backhand. Now, Savannah was continually squaring her shoulders up to 90 degrees. She continually did that and was then throwing the shots. There's no power. There's no rotation. There's no power. And she can hit. I wouldn't want Savannah Marshall to crack me. So she's a natural puncher. But I'm not being harsh. I'm just breaking it down. This is what I like to do. Her shape was completely wrong. Her leverage wasn't there at all. She had no leverage in her work. And her feet were never balanced and her feet were never set. She was skipping. She was skipping from the first seconds in that fight. She was tapping, pivoting. I'm like, what are you doing? And it's almost that, you know, good professionals as well, they reduce movement. They reduce the amount of movement they need. You don't need to continually shift off the spot. A good fighter will hold the center of the ring, and that is exactly what Clarissa Shields did.
Mayweather does that, doesn't he?
Holds the center of the ring. Shields was better than I thought she was. I haven't even been impressed by any of the opposition. Peter Fury said the same thing, didn't he? He says, let's be honest, none of them have really beaten anybody. I know it's kind of tongue-in-cheek, but there was something in it. So I wasn't massively sold on Shields, but when I watched her, I thought, actually, this is a seasoned fighter. This is somebody, I got this wrong. This was somebody who's got great balance. And, I always break it down from a coach's point of view, but great fighters have great balance. You just said Floyd Mayweather, Floyd Mayweather had great balance. Jersey Joe Walcott had great balance. Ezra Charles had great balance. Joe Louis was slow feet, but he had fantastic balance. Bernard Hopkins, he would hold ring center. His balance was second to none. And all of those fighters, when they've got great balance, they get great leverage, they get great positioning, and they basically become the ring general. The whole center of the ring become the ring general. And I think Savannah needs to, you have to remember, yes, she was a world champion in the amateurs, but she still only had 13 fights. Realistically, 13 fights, 2-minute rounds, 10 of those are knockouts. How much ring time, and this is not women's fault, how much ring time, not in the gym, in the ring, under the lights, when it counts, how much ring time has she had in terms of minutes in a professional ring? And it's probably not that much. She's a novice. The novices, because they're thrust into these massive fights because there's no one else to fight. The pool is shallow, and you have to jump into these big fights. But again, we had the Boone Gardner Mayer fight, less than 30 fights between them. We had Shields and Marshall, 24 fights between them.
Yeah,
it's not a massive experience.
If you look at them, it's like, say, for instance, light middleweight, there's 40 times more fighters in men's division.
Exactly, and that's the thing. And you have to get to, I've just mentioned, Savannah Marshall, 12 fights. If you look at Dennis McCann, what's he had now? 10 fights. He's not even come through domestic level yet, as he's still learning his craft. And it's unfair on the women in some ways, because there isn't that kind of like, we talk about this. It's probably mythical now when you go area level, prospect area level, English title level, British title level. We say European, but now they go for intercontinental belts, minor world titles. But there are levels, aren't there? But in women's boxing, it seems like there are two pools of fighters. The people who can't fight, and then there are everybody else who's a world champion. There's no kind of like steps for you to get to that stage. You're thrust into world title fights. I'm not being critical. I'm just trying to break it down and say, listen, it's difficult and it's hard getting the ring time. And I mean, you only had to look at the undercard of the Sky. That undercard was dreadful, wasn't it? I mean, the Lauren Price, for example, this is a gold medalist. I think she's pretty much won everything in the amateurs. Lauren Price has won absolutely everything. And it's a bit like, even like Fraser Clark. Look at the people that are serving up for them. So they've actually dropped down 10 levels. And the undercard, I thought every opponent, certainly on the Sky show, the one I watched on YouTube before the main event, I'm going to be polite, but all of the opposition was out of shape. They all had rolls of fat. They looked about 2 stone above the natural fighting weight. And they were all fighting unbeaten girls who had won kind of Olympic medals and national titles, and they'd been GB kids. And the fighting dinner ladies, it's not good enough.
Do you feel that something should be done about the shape of some of these fighters, male and female, getting in the ring? That Lovejoy guy, he's one. And that girl who fought April Hunter. I mean, she looked like somebody picking her kids up from school at 3 o'clock, didn't she? You know what I mean?
And the thing is it's dreadful, because what happens is it doesn't give boxing a good name. I mean, people now listening will be saying, hang on a minute, Tyson Fury is not exactly built like Kenny Norton. But, Fury's, all right, he's not trim, but he's athletic in his own way, and he's mobile in his own way. But generally, I think fighters should look like fighters. Everybody has different body types, different metabolisms. But those girls you just talked about, and the likes of Lovejoy and people like that, they're out of shape, mate. It's nothing to do with genetics and nothing to do with anything about that. They're out of shape. And they're out of shape because they're not training like professional athletes. I mean, think about boxing. Boxing's one thing, but if you watch other sports, you watch the Olympics. So I don't watch football, but the World Cup's coming up shortly, isn't it? Yeah. We don't see fat footballers, do we? People used to say Gaza was fat. Gaza wasn't fat. Gaza was a bit porky, and Rooney was a little bit chubby.
But yeah, when they did all tests on him in the 90s, he was fittest. When he would have played in Italy, he was fittest. He beat everybody in fitness tests, didn't he? When he played in Italy. So.
Fit as hell. So in boxing, unfortunately, we get these people roll into the ring, and it's like, where have you been training? Burger King. It's not good enough, mate. It doesn't create a good aesthetic, and all I'll say is all the fighters I've ever trained, they've all been in shape.
Yeah. Over 2 million views, it did.
Listen, nowadays, 2 million views, I've heard people saying it's a free show. In some ways it is, but you still have to subscribe to Sky Sports. But 2 million views is a good number. It's a really good number in this day and age, because obviously we've got a very diverse set of programs on Saturday night, people watching all kinds of things. It was brilliant watching Barry McGuigan and Nigel Benn, and those millions and millions of people used to tune in. But you also had 3 or 4 channels and not a lot else going on Saturday night. So there was a combination of that. Boxing was big then, by the way, but 2 million is a good number, and I've not heard those numbers from Sky for quite a while. And I guess what it does show is if you have a little bit of innovation, then and you get the fights that people want, people will tune in. And this is where boxing is killing itself, because people want to see the best fight the best. And that's what we got on Saturday. We got the number 1 and 2 fighting. The number 1 proved she was number 1. Number 2 proved she wasn't ready yet. No big deal. She'll come again. But, you know, I didn't love the undercard, but we had a great main event. And I guess once you've had a great main event, you tend to forget everything else that's gone on, don't you?
What do you think about Bean's performance? Do you feel that he goes on too much, coming out with all them privately educated words that he comes out with?
You know what? I might be wrong here. Okay, I'm not trying to put you on a platform, you know, elevate you and blow smoke. I sometimes wonder some of the things that Bean says and some of the things that other people say, if they're almost like saying it because you give them stick for it, like the cacophony of noise. I mean, that was the first thing he said when Marshall came out. It was a cacophony of noise, and I thought, people hear what goes on this channel and other channels, and you know the stick that they're getting, rightly so. And I just wonder with Bean, it's like, is he just living his best life and does he love it? Or is he almost like having a little jab at the critics, saying, if I want to get excited, I'm Sky Sports, I'll do what the hell I want.
He's not a promoter though, is he?
No, he was giddy. He was really giddy, wasn't he?
When you ask him in an interview, when he's asked a question, you can say for something like, how are you doing, Adam? How are we doing? We've got Savannah Marshall, we've got Shields, we've got Bungard, we've got Mayer, Adam Spice. Rough, tough, rugged, durable, all action, compelling. All them words. Shut your mouth. Just do the commentating. You didn't get Howard Cosell carrying off like that, did you? You just let them fight. You know what I watched overnight? I watched Ron Lyle against
George Foreman.
Now, it's obviously... When I worked for Dennis, we used to, if we'd ever been out for a beer, Dennis used to say, oh, put Ron Lyle on, Dennis's dad, sorry. Put Ron Lyle on and George Foreman poker. So I'd get Ron Lyle and we'd all sit watching it. And they loved that fight, you see. He used to take Dennis's dad back in the day. And you don't get commentators going, added spice, all that, and look at the power. You don't get that. They just speak when a shot's thrown and that. We don't want to hear about Ugas camping it, Pete, just and what about that? What about that other guy? Yeah, and Josh Warrington, you know, he's got a stamp book collection, and this other guy, I've just seen the design that he's going to have next week for the spider's web on his elbow. Tattoo. All that nonsense. I don't want to hear about tattoos, Bean.
It's loaded because, do you know what I watched this morning? This is because I just do. Thomas Earns' One Rolled and popped up on my YouTube. I thought, oh, it's a few years since I've watched it. And I actually was thinking about what you've just said. So there was, you know, Tim Ryan, Gil Glancy and Marvin Hagler were commentating. And they've got a good tone to the commentary, but as you've just said, to talk about the fight. And then if there's a knockdown, you'll hear, you know, Tim Ryan says, big right hand from Thomas Earns, down goes Roldan. And you hear it, but they're not having orgasms over like the ring walks and stuff. They keep it relatively cool, they engage you, and they don't insult you. But as you just said, the detail, and his sister's mum's done this, and like he just said, he's just got a new sofa, and it's like, they do, don't they? It's rubbish, isn't it? It's just
he's just got a new sofa.
It's got a new sofa, and it's covered in, you know, it's black. And it's just like, nobody cares about this stuff, mate. It's just like, don't insult us, tell us about the fights, and gives a little bit of a technical breakdown. And it's the one thing I have learned though is just to zone out from it. It took me a long time to zone out, but when he said a cacophony of noise, I just smiled and I thought about you, and I thought it might be a little jab, I don't know.
Well, I ain't got a problem with Adam Smith. Obviously, he's passionate about the sport and he's been involved with it since early 90s, hasn't he, with Sky? I mean, his old man works there, doesn't he? Or his dad were a big cheese at Sky, wasn't he, for years when it first started. His dad, when Alan Sugar and all them started it all off, didn't they?
Yeah.
Back in the day and all that, is it? So Bean's obviously well in at Sky, isn't he? Well, I'll tell you how well in he is. They were going to sack him, weren't they? Chris Brown wanted him gone. Said, you're getting too close to fighters, blah, blah, blah. Just do your job. He was a revolving reporter when it started out.
Yeah.
But what he did, he was going around their houses and all that and blah, blah, blah. And Chris Brown wanted him gone. Well, Bean got rid of Chris Brown, let me tell you. So he's a guy not to be messed with, isn't it? There.
Oh, he's a strong guy. I've met him twice, chatted to him twice at the Sky shows. Nice guy. The one thing what does come out, actually, he's massively passionate about boxing. He loves it. He just...
But he goes on about, him and Johnny are like brothers and blah, blah, blah. Savannah Marshall's like his little sister and Ben Shalom's like his little brother. Let me tell you this, Ben Shalom. If Bean has to... See that paring knife there? If Bean has to eat in your back, he will do it and he will not bat an eyelid and you will be gone. If you don't believe me, go and ask Glenn McCrory. All right? And he's not the first one. So Bean is a nasty little so-and-so. So behind the scenes, mate, he will look after Bean. Let me tell you. We all remember when Dennis had all them dates at Satanta and he was riding high with Satanta and it looked like Bean on his way out at Sky. Bean were in touch with Dennis. Oh, Dennis, things are not going good here. Can you get me on there? Bean is innovative, I will say that, but Bean looks after Bean like the rest of them.
Yeah.
So it's just one of them things. Okay, we'll move on to, before we go on to part 2, Conor Benn still not come out and said a word. Cal has come out and said a couple of words. Eddie's said a couple of words, then disappeared to Australia. He's now in Mexico. Board have said nothing. The wheels Spotty Frank out. What do you make of it all and how are they going about it? You want to go on to part 2, in fact? We'll go straight on to part 2.
Because it's a big question. Yeah.
2 seconds.